Now we're going to go to Lord Christopher Monckton here in a moment with some amazing news. I've seen it in major newspapers all over the world. They're being forced to report on this. The Daily Mail has the headline, Global Warming and the Twisting of Our Children's Minds. And this is going on in one of the most prestigious publications. They've been caught putting out fake maps showing that Greenland is melting when it's not, and showing islands where the ice is supposedly melted, saying they're new islands when those islands already existed and were not covered by ice. So just absolute fraud, systematically from pillar to post. We'll be talking about it with Lord Monckton here in just a moment. And the good news is 10 years ago, they would just stonewall and say, ridiculous, peer-reviewed, everyone knows it. This time they're like, oh, it's a mistake, sorry. Mistakes systematically, and then we have the internal emails that is hide the decline, don't let this get out. It's systematic fraud. All right, we're going to Lord Monckton here now. Going to Lord Christopher Monckton, who, by the way, joined us last week on the Nightly News. I had to get him on, and I appreciate him coming on short notice to deal with yet another fraud that we've caught academia, the establishment, in a unified, desperate cult exercise in authoritatively attempting to appeal to authority and deceive people with fake maps. They predicted all these islands in the Pacific would be underwater. They're actually now dropping sea levels. So now they say that's global warming. And they can't even get their propaganda straight. And always the answer is shut down power plants in England, Europe, the U.S., move them to China for Maurice Strong or Al Gore or Prince Philip's investments. And it says here, Lord Monckton is a British statesman, public speaker, former newspaper editor, former member of the Conservative Party. And this is an old bio. He's back. He's one of the heads of the UK Independence Party right now. Monckton has been the head of the policy unit of the UK Independence Party since 2010. He served as deputy leader of the party under Lord Pearson. He also served in the Conservative Central Office and worked as one of the top advisors to Margaret Thatcher, number 10 policy unit during the 1980s. Of course, he spoke out against Bilderberg and world government, per his advice. He also worked for The Universe, The Sunday Telegraph, Today, The Evening Standard, scienceandpublicpolicy.org is his website, scienceandpublicpolicy.org. I would have to say, out of anybody out there, even more than Mark Moreno, who's a great mind, Lord Christopher Monckton is the chief prosecutor of this tyranny, the chief person in the face facing demonization, calls for arrest, hoaxes, like they say that Rand Paul is not a medical doctor, or Ron Paul is an elitist, or they worship Buddha secretly. They tried saying he's not a lord when it's on record he is. Every form of fraud has been leveled against him, and he's come out unscathed, and they will not debate him. But again, scienceandpublicpolicy.org. He joins us for the balance of the hour to go over the latest. Well, there's so many now. One of the biggest frauds in the last 24 hours. Lord Monckton, don't we enter a danger zone here, though, that so many frauds are coming out now that even though each one of these is bigger than ClimateGate, now there's so many of them we don't really savor properly, and that a lot of this is running off like spilt milk into the gutter?
That's a very good analogy, but I think a better analogy is with what happened under fascism in Germany and under communism in Russia, and still does happen under communism in China. These totalitarian regimes lie and lie and lie all the time. And what we have now are the new legalists, the new totalitarians, who are using the global warming scare as a kind of Trojan horse to get away with pushing global government through. And what they're doing is they're saying, right, we can make up any old rubbish because we've now got the media where we want them. We've got the entire political left where we want it, because, of course, the left is fascist, it is communist, it always has been. That's what, it was the National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany, and, of course, the communists call themselves socialist too. So these extremists are all on the left, and they've decided they're now so strong that they can get away with lying and lying and lying again. But it will be just as it used to be under fascism in Germany or Italy and under communism in China or Russia. Nobody is now believing a word they say. And when the Times, of all people, comes out with an atlas of the world and wipes off, or plans to wipe off, Tuvalu and the Maldives on the ground that these are about to disappear beneath the rising waves, when we've just had a year of sea level falling really rather rapidly, and sea level is only rising in any case at a rate equivalent to 1 foot per century, much as it has been for the last 1.5 to 2 centuries, then you've got to wonder what they're on, and please could I have some? It is really quite extraordinary. Let's take the Maldives. Let's do, as you know I like to do this, Alex, a few facts. Now, Professor Niklas Mörner, who's the ranking expert in the world on sea level, knows more about it than anybody else. He has spent 10 years researching the Maldives meticulously in greater detail than anywhere else in the world to do with sea level. And he has found that in the last 50 years there hasn't been any sea level rise in the Maldives, nor has there in Tuvalu, nor have there in most of these Pacific islands. And the reason why is, apart from anything else, that corals grow to meet the light. And if water comes over them, they grow a bit more and catch up and remake and make a new shoreline. And in fact, a recent paper in the peer-reviewed literature has measured several of these islands throughout the Pacific and has found that indeed they are growing. They're well able to keep up with such little sea level rise as there has been. Of course, there's been none in the last year. Or you could go to Bangladesh, another of the places where the Times has got its eraser out and wiped out bits of the coastline. In fact, apart from a little coastal erosion, which has nothing to do with global warming and everything to do with clearing the mangrove swamps so they can put prawn farms in, and then the waves come in and wash the sand away that the mangroves were naturally holding together. Apart from that, there has been no loss of land in Bangladesh. Indeed, because sea level in that region has, get this, fallen somewhat over the last 10 or 15 years, there's 7,000 square kilometers of extra land in Bangladesh. But you won't find that on the Times Atlas's map. How do I know all this? Because Niklas Mörner went to Bangladesh last December with a group of scientists. He was the only one who bothered to calibrate his satellite altimeter correctly by climbing 100 meters up and down so that the thing could register properly. He was then able to go all along the shoreline of Bangladesh. He noted the coastal erosion and what had caused it, nothing to do with global warming. It was man-made stupidity locally, cutting away the mangrove swamps. And he was able to measure, which none of the others could because they didn't calibrate their instruments properly, that sea level in Bangladesh has actually fallen. So all of this nonsense is gradually being nailed because people are seeing, as Professor Mörner is seeing with their own eyes, that the stories we're being told in the Times Atlas or on Al Gore's fatuous 24 hours of so-called reality, I don't know what planet he lives on, but it's not the same one as mine.
Well, Lord Monckton, I want to get to Al Gore's 24 hours of baloney that Mark Moreno at Climate Depot categorized dozens and dozens and dozens of all the greenies saying, get rid of Al Gore, he's no longer useful. He's discredited. So even his own system, like the proletariat or the Duma or something, you know, the minions of the communist system and the commissars above them are all turning against him and saying throw him out. But here's the Daily Mail, and this is in a bunch of other newspapers as well, and we'll put it on screen for people that are watching on prisonplanet.tv, not just listening on the radio. If you're a radio listener, just search the term global warming and the twisting of our children's minds. That's out of dailymail.co.uk, but it's also in a bunch of other papers. They're having to admit it as well, but saying it's just a mistake. The Times Atlas of the World that Lord Monckton just mentioned, regularly updated since the Victorian age, proudly presents itself as the most authoritative atlas in the world. That's a quote. You know, you just peer-reviewed. You cannot question it. But in its latest hefty edition, published an eye-watering piece for 150 pounds. That's almost $300, ladies and gentlemen. Has become the focus of a bizarre climate change row or fight. The new atlas shows the ice in Greenland, the northern hemisphere's largest ice cap, to be melting so fast since '99, nearly a sixth of it has vanished. An area the size of Britain and Iceland combined, once covered in ice and snow, has become green and ice-free. But then, of course, there's satellite photos they go through that show that hasn't happened. The publishers said the map revealed a whole new island off Greenland's coast, formerly viewed as part of the mainland. but which is vanishing ice, is now shown to be quite separate. Local inhabitants have been celebrating the event by giving it an inlet name, meaning warming island. But no sooner was the shocking evidence of global warming reported that voices throughout the scientific community began to question the atlas's claims. And it turns out for 50 years, the island has been there and photographed. It turns out that it has settlements. It turns out it was all a complete lie. It's not an island where the ice sheet disappeared and there's now an island. And it goes through it. So just like Kilimanjaro's ice has come back in Africa and it shows that it's cyclical, or the ice caps are growing again on Mars, and I had David Rothschild on. He said, well, that's because Mars is closer to the sun than the Earth. And I said, no, it's not. It's the next planet out. And he said, no, it's not. You're a conspiracy theorist. So now it's Mercury, Venus, Mars, Earth, not Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. I mean, and that interview's public. I mean, and he laughed at me, thinking my audience was dumb. And so since that's all been exposed, the Himalayas haven't melted. They've just moved on to a new fraud. And no sooner do we expose that, a new fraud, and it's just leapfrogging. And meanwhile, Bill Clinton, and I'll stop ranting, has the nerve to come out today and say in the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, climate deniers make us look like a joke, and says that basically Americans look like mentally ill jokes to the world because we don't accept Al Gore on everything he says. And I'm sorry, Lord Monckton, I had to go over that a bit. So there's just no end to the fraud.
No, you're quite right. And just take this Greenland thing. I mean, there was a wonderful paper on Greenland by Johannesson et al. In 2005, in which he said that practically right across the vast ice sheet, except just at the fringes, the ice sheet had actually thickened by 2 inches per year for 12 years, a total of 2 feet right across that ice sheet. Now, that is an enormous increase in ice. And then in a subsequent paper, he said, well, some of it's gone back into the ocean, about a quarter of it, in fact. But most of it's still up there, which is one of the reasons why sea level is falling. So all of these claims that are now being made are very stupid claims. Of course, the left-wing media will continue not to publish the truth, most of them. They'll go on just peddling the lies, just as they did in Nazi Germany or communist Russia. How do you think those regimes managed to survive? They survived because the media will always fawn upon power. And if the left, if the communists were strong enough, the fascists were brutal enough, then the press would fawn upon them, and they would only get interviews with the great ones if they were willing to tell the party line. Al Gore won't debate with me. He won't, in fact, answer unscripted questions at any of his talks. He won't answer questions from journalists unless they have been cleared by his staff as being so dopey, acquiescent, or asleep at the switch.
Just to interrupt again, Lord Monckton, because I want you to speak to this directly then. Last week when you were on with us, last Wednesday or Thursday, I dubbed the interview The Fall of Al Gore. And then now over the weekend and this weekend, even his supporters said he has fallen, go away. They said resign, stop speaking. Is this not a giant victory that their grand champion has been taken down by yourself and the facts?
I think it's the facts that have done it. I mean, certainly it helped that I was one of those. I, in fact, wrote the scientific testimony in the court case against him, which we had in the UK in 2007.
Certainly, take credit. Take credit. You have been on him like a hunting dog after a fox.
Well, I've been trying to debate with him. Even it got to the point where the Republicans in Congress a couple of years ago rang me up and they said, get yourself on a plane to Washington. We've heard that Al Gore is going to be testifying in front of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and we want you to be the Republican witness replying to it. And I got on the plane, and when I landed, they said, terribly sorry, it's all cancelled. Because the moment the Democrats heard that you were going to be the witness, they said you can have anyone else, but you can't have Monckton. So Newt Gingrich stood in for me and didn't do too bad a job. But that shows how frightened they are of the truth. They know, I know, where all the bodies are buried in this. They know I've done the science and done the research and got the answers. I'm no genius, goodness knows. You don't have to be. You just have to be very persistent, very patient, sitting at the feet of the great scientists around the world, asking interminable, stupid questions until you eventually understand it.
Stay there, sir. We got to go to break. We'll come back and talk about where these fraudsters are going in the future and let you make any other points you'd like to make. Stay with us. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.